Hello, everybody, and welcome to the world's favorite youth baseball podcast, Clearing the Bases, featuring Coach Jimmy Filangeri. I'm David Friedman, and I want to thank you for coming along this ride with us. How are we doing tonight, Coach?
We're doing good, Dave. It's that time of year again.
Woohoo! We got snow on the ground, but we got tryouts going on for high school ball. It's exciting. We're about to get right into the thick of things.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we're playing baseball now. We started our tryouts this past Saturday, and team was picked. Actually, it was announced today. So my team is picked, ready to roll, and we start practice this Friday.
Wow, that's awesome. So you had your tryouts. My team's tryouts are starting on this coming Monday. And for reference points, so today is, as we're recording this, is March 9th. So it is still, we're in New York. So we're still in winter. Unfortunately, the outside elements are not being particularly favorable for us. Were you guys able to get outside, or did you have to do everything in the gym?
You know, very, very unusual this year is all of our tryouts, all of the days. We went Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So 4 days we were all outside.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we've been getting some ups and downs of 60-degree day, 30-degree day, stuff like that. So that's excellent. Yeah, I've been looking at the forecast, and looks like if everything stays as along the lines that it's looking right now, we'll be outside for our couple of days. And we only need a couple of days. We've got a smaller school that we're dealing with, a smaller pool of players. We've been doing winter workouts, so we've got a good feel for the most part for who's coming in. There's a couple kids on the bubble, and that's the type of thing you and I talk about all the time. I know your philosophy, I think, is right in line with mine of, need to be on your game, and that's not just baseball wise, right? That's in all aspects of showing up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like you said, you've had a good look at the players. I don't have that advantage. I see them for the first time, the first day of tryouts. And I've said this before, I'm an observer. As a coach, that's what I do. I watch what you do. And there's a lot more that goes into a tryout than just how you feel the ground ball, how you hit, and your athleticism. It's also your attitude, and it's also the way you approach things.
Yeah. And I mean, and even in a tryout, you can see a lot about somebody as a team player, whether they're a team player or not. I think in a lot of cases, as much as the tryout is an individual thing, it's still to be part of the team, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I'll tell you, we had a big group. We had just about 70 kids come out for the freshman and the JV team. So that's quite a few kids. And
that's big.
Yes, you get your clowns. You get guys that are acting like clowns. And I don't think that they understand that, although that may not be the total package that you're looking at, but let me tell you something. If it comes down between you and another player and I see you're acting like a clown, well, guess what?
Yeah, I'm taking the effort. I'm taking the effort and attitude all day long.
Absolutely. And one of the stories that I love to tell is, this was about 4 years ago. We did the tryouts, and it came down to the very last 2 picks. And you know how it is, Dave. Those picks are very difficult at the very end. The first 10, 12 are easy. The last couple are the toughest. So there were 2 kids, and one of them, I wanted on a team. Well, and my reason for wanting him on a team was because of his effort and his attitude during the tryouts. There's something about him that I liked. I wound up taking him on a team, and he wound up starting almost every game for us in the outfield. And wow. He wound up getting we don't give an MVP award, but we give awards similar, and he got that award.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. And that's just, it's not all about the blue chipper who's been the all-star since he was 9 years old. Sometimes it's that marginal kid that, by putting in the extra time and effort and energy and having the right attitude, they surprise you and sometimes surprise themselves and get into a position where you can't take them off the field, that's awesome.
Yeah. And, that's the other thing too, is that when the tryout is all over, and I'm sure you feel the same way about this, I do not like to cut players. If I could, I would take every one of them.
Oh, crushing a player's hopes and dreams. I love that, Jimmy. Who doesn't? No, it's awful. It really is, especially like I said. I mean, I hate to put it in these terms, but at least with yours, you've got the misery loves company thing, because if you got that many kids trying out, that's an awful lot of kids that aren't gonna have a spot. With a school like the one that I work through, you're talking about literally just a couple of kids.
Yeah.
Basically that just, it might be that we don't have enough spots, or it might be that they're such a project. And if we're not seeing the proper attitude during the couple of days that we're together, then, we don't want to sit there and feel guilty every game that they don't get in. Right. That, so, you want to take kids that are going to be able to help the team, and by virtue of that, helping themselves. So there's some tough things, but there's an awful lot that you can see. And the advantage I have, you as the head coach, I'm sure have a much more narrow focus as these kids are trying out. As the assistant coach, I have the luxury of not always being directly involved with the play that's going on. So I can more watch the kids as they're standing in line, waiting their turn, or I can see, is a kid helping somebody else with something, or things like that. So I think I have I have a better advantage of that. Hopefully you have somebody that you rely on to help you with that stuff. But again, to me, that goes a long way.
Yeah. I believe it or not, I'm lucky because this year with tryouts, there were quite a few coaches there. I would say we probably had at least 6 coaches there. So as the head coach, I was able to have other guys hitting fungos and, doing that thing. And basically I was doing what you just described, walking around, watching how guys were acting. Obviously I'm looking at how they field ground balls and fly balls and hit and run. I'm watching all of that also, but yeah, I have the affordability, we'll call it, of being able to watch.
All right. Excellent. Oh, good. Because, at this point, and both of us being JV coaches, obviously our whole focus is not just on this year, but who do we see has that potential to move up through the ladder, move up to that next level, to make it onto, not just make it onto varsity team and become a starter on varsity and become an important player on the varsity team.
Well, when we run our tryouts, the other good thing is that the varsity coach and the assistant varsity coach are involved with the lower level tryouts. And, to your point, our varsity coach has, I don't want to say he has no, he does. He has the final say on who's going to make it, because again, he's looking at it from a standpoint like you just explained. Hey, I see something in this kid that I think projects out to being a good junior and senior. I want him on the team. So, that's the way the team is picked. It's a collaboration.
That makes all the sense in the world, obviously, because if you got somebody that you cut now, there's no saying they're even going to try out next year. So that could, and plus obviously by working through the JV program and taking the reps and all that, we talk about this stuff all the time. Obviously that should only put them in a better position to contribute the following years. So
exactly.
So that's a big thing of putting these kids, getting these kids together, so that they can show what they can do not only now, but you're looking at, like we said, projecting them out over the next couple of years. That feeds right into this week's topic. And this takes us in a little different direction than a lot of what our conversations are, because this is going to focus more at the other end of the spectrum, as they're no longer youth players and we're getting into actually being fully grown men, young men, but fully grown men, as they're going into the college ranks and then hopefully into the major leagues. And so I was very excited to have this conversation with Joseph. I think it was very, very interesting. I hope everybody likes it. Let's go ahead and hit it off. And here's Joseph. We're very pleased to have with us today Mr. Joseph Guzman. He is with the Empowerment Sports Group, and he is the MLB draft advisor and agent for up-and-coming players. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for stopping by, Joe.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us how your journey begins with baseball?
Okay, so my dad came from Dominican Republic, played baseball and grew up in New York, played with Sean Dunston, and I was always with him at the ballpark. I grew up in Flushing, very close to Shea Stadium. Big Mets fan, unfortunately.
Uh-oh.
Because we don't, the Mets don't ever win. So I'm still waiting. Maybe in my lifetime, I'll see a World Series championship. But I just really had a deep love for the game. And then my dad got a transfer to Florida when I was 15. And I played on the JV team as a freshman there, Coral Springs High School. But then I ended up transferring to a high school in Weston, Florida, Sagemont, and had a really good senior year. Ended up getting a scholarship to Tennessee Wesleyan. Very good NAIA program. At that point, I had some personal stuff going on with my mom. So I came back to Florida. And then I ended up going to the Dominican Republic. I played extended spring training with the Kansas City Royals at the academy down there. And I ended up coming back to finish college. And then at that point, my perspective a little bit changed. And then I went and I worked with the Kansas City Royals back in the Dominican Republic. I worked with Jeff Deskin on cultural development, basically prepare those kids from Latin America for life in the United States. It was really neat. Had a really good experience with Jeff Deskin. And then at that point, I started to help players find agents. And then one of the agents, he asked if I wanted to work with him. Really good guy. And I worked with him for 3 years. And we had 16 guys that I recruited that were drafted and signed. After that, I moved on to the agency that I'm with now, Empowerment Sports Group, and partnered with Michael McGinnis because our visions are more aligned of helping those guys with less support and those lower level round guys, maybe those 10 to 20 round guys. And so I just really, I really appreciated the mentality he had about things and the way he was going about it. And it was just a really good fit. So then this past year, we had a really good story, a 17th round kid out of Key West High School. He was drafted by the Rangers in the 17th round. He only had about 5 or 6 teams that were really interested. And so he was not ranked in perfect game. He wasn't ranked in PBR, but the kid just had it mentally. He just would not stop working. And over the course of the 6 weeks he was there this summer, he went from 90 to topping out at 95.
Wow.
I love helping guys like that. And then most recently we had an international player sign in December. He signed with the Tigers. His name's Clayton Campbell Jr. He was in Australia. Was very, very difficult to get to in the scouting perspective because of the whole lockdown and COVID and everything going on.
Right.
So on the international side of things, most of the international scouts, they see kids in Latin America. A lot of those international cross-checkers and scouts live in the Southeast, in Florida, a lot of them. So they host workouts here for international players, and they'll bring those Latin American kids straight to Miami, have them work out in front of the bosses. And so we were able to get him into the workout, and he just went off. He could just really hit. And the Tigers, they were really pressing to get him signed. The big international director, Tom Moore, was there. And then the Australian scout that saw him originally, Kevin Hooker, he really, really liked Clayton. So he put in a good word. So when he got to the workout, that also helped. But really cool story as well. Just having 2 guys like that this year that, underdog type guys, get picked up and get to start their professional career,
Yeah, that's awesome. Especially under the conditions, like you said, with COVID and restricted travel and all that. So how does a kid, I get the Dominican Republic, that's been call it a feeder ground for the MLB for, decades at this point, but how does a kid from Australia get on your radar?
So just a lot of good relationships that I've established in different places. There's a good contact there that I have, and just helping people, even if, you can't always expect people to do things for you. And I think a lot of times people think like, oh, this person should do something for me when, you've never really done anything for them. So I always try to help people even before they help me, because that's just the type of person I am. So I'm very big on relationships. I'm very good at, checking in with people, wishing them a happy holidays, and just building relationships in that sense, and seeing what they bring to the table as well. Because sometimes we ignore information. I don't, but people ignore information from a certain person just because you don't know them.
Mhm.
And then you might miss out. So I'm very open to all information. If someone reaches out to me and says, "Hey man, would you take a look at this kid?" And if it's a kid I can go see, I'll go and see him, and I had a situation like that 3 years ago, that I actually just went to Oregon to watch a player. And then there was that player and another player. And just because I did that, I saw the other player, and that year the kid ended up walking on to a Pac-12 school, didn't have any offers. And I sat with the parents for like an hour, like trying to tell them like, this kid's going to be a big leaguer. Like he's got everything it takes, and so they were like, yeah, but he's probably just going to go to the school or whatever. And so this past June, he gets drafted in the second round for like
Wow.
800,000. And like, he's not one of my guys, but I recognize that only because like I listened to some information that I got, and I actually went out to see what was there,
Right.
So I think having those relationships with people in different parts of the country and different parts of the world, even that I have, keeping those relationships alive. Like I said, I feel like a lot of people just, they want things, but then, they don't want to do anything for it. So you just reach out to someone when you want something, they're going to know like, oh, he just wants something, and it's not a real relationship where you're helping each other out. So I think that's a big part of it.
So basically what you're doing, correct me if I'm wrong, but you take players that you hear about that are not necessarily getting the looks that someone may think that this kid has ability for this, that, or the other thing, but he's not getting the look. So they'll contact somebody like you that'll come and, for lack of a better description, evaluate the player to say, okay, look, this is what he's capable of doing. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I do get calls like that. I also learned a lot from Mike Medici. So Mike Medici is the Midwest area scout for the Rangers, and he has a scout school. It's called Scout School 360, and he's a really good friend of mine. I learned a lot as far as the scouting scale from him, and just watching a lot of baseball, being able to evaluate kids, how they move, how their swing looks, how they use their lower half, just being able to project all these things, and just watching all these games, I've gotten a lot better at it over the years. So I'll go and evaluate a player, and I might say, okay, this player is not ready right now, but I might still take him and say, look, man, I think in 3 years you're going to turn into something. And I'll continue to have relations. I'll go watch them play while they're in college. And that's basically the only thing an advisor can do. So what an advisor does is has a relationship with the family, and then they are able to go see the player. They're able to talk to some scouts about the player, but you can't provide anything of value. So that's the difference between an advisor and an agent. Once the player signs professionally, then I become the player's agent, and then I can buy them the equipment they need. I can take them out to dinner. I can take their family out to dinner. I can do all those things of value. So as an advisor, I can give advice. I can tell them, hey, you should probably go to this summer league or this summer league, or we can talk about the colleges that they're going to. Because I've had players commit to all different colleges all over the country, and Power 5 conferences, mid-major conferences. And we talk about the decisions that, okay, how many pitchers have gotten drafted out of here? How's the pitching coach there? Did the pitching coach just leave? Did the hitting coach just leave? Is it a new hitting coach? Like, what's their philosophy? So we sit down and kind of try to find what's the best fit. Have another player this year that was supposed to go to a Pac-12 school, and he ended up at Lipscomb because there was lack of money at the Pac-12 school because of COVID and everything that happened. And he's just going off this spring, but he was in an environment that was perfect for him to thrive, which is what he needed all this time. And now he's thriving. Whereas if he would have went to the Pac-12 school, he might not have gotten as much opportunity and much of a leash. and then he might be on the bench right away. And now he's questioning himself. His confidence is down the drain, and it just becomes a very difficult situation.
Yeah, it's fun. It's something we actually talk about quite a bit here. It's something I'm a big advocate for playing at. I hate to say playing at your level. I guess we never really put it into direct terms. Jimmy and I we've talked amongst ourselves or with the guests, but playing at or just above your level, as opposed to the example I'll give is, you get the ninth grader that is on the cusp of being on varsity versus JV, and the varsity coach pulls him up and then never plays him, and now he just had a wasted year. His attitude is going to go to crap, and the kid's miserable. And I've seen kids quit playing under those conditions, as of, if you played him on JV, probably never sat. So what's, and that kind of thing. And I understand, kind of balancing out what's best for the team versus what's best for the individual. But in this case, it's all about what's best for the individual, because you're talking about totally separate organizations, as opposed to JV varsity where it's connected. So trying to figure that out, I mean, that's got to be just such a specialized skill on your behalf.
Yeah, it definitely is. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of research on the draft. I do a lot of research on different coaches. And I also have experiences with players that have gone to certain programs. So that, one-on-one experience from the player and what they tell me, that means a lot too. It might not be everything, because sometimes, maybe even a lot of times, the player has done something wrong, and that's why they're not getting opportunities to play. There's little things sometimes a player is late for morning workouts. Sometimes a player is, no energy at practice. He's going through the motions, and I'm not there to see every single thing. So I also have to, be cognizant of those things and evaluate that mental aspect of it. And some of the things that I do in that sense is, does the player communicate with me a lot? Does he let me know things, or am I always the one going to get information from him? So that kind of, I figured out there's a correlation for sure of those players that reach out to me and say, even if it's like Merry Christmas, it's like they're going out of their way. They're thinking that far ahead. It shows some level of responsibility. Or they tell me about their game. They tell me about, hey, I went this, I didn't really feel good this game. And I'll say, oh, hey, let's call me, let's talk and have conversations about it. You can tell that the maturity level is like there. And then there's other guys that, don't like to be on their phone. So maybe you just have to call them and then they'll just talk to you for an hour. So you just got to like weed through and see. But there's definitely different circumstances for players. Some players don't fit in certain environments. Maybe the school work is overwhelming. I've had that situation where they go to a very high academic school, very good baseball program, but the schoolwork is just way too much for them, and they're just miserable. And then they're performing poorly on the baseball field because they're taking it out there and they're like, I'm thinking about this paper that I have to do after this.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the mental side of the game and how important that is, and how much that can affect everything else. So I think that's great, because obviously anybody can look at a stat sheet like you were talking about earlier, see what are they getting on the gun, what's their on base percentage on that. But unless you're getting in there and digging and talking to coaches and maybe other players on the team to really find out is it a prima donna, or is it somebody is he the first one in the building and the last to leave type of guy?
Right. Yeah. That goes a long way, man. I mean, because coaches see all those things. Even kids that miss classes, like they're just missing classes. They're absent. They're sleeping through the class. So all those little details, they start to add up, and then a coach gets fed up with it, because coaches want guys that are responsible, that are going to do things. And it's the same thing with, the guys that you work with, right? They have to show responsibility. They have to reach out to coaches. Like, don't be afraid to reach out to a coach if that's a place you really want to go to. I encourage some of my I have players that are in ninth grade, that are in 10th grade that I feel are going to be, top round guys in the future. So I tell them, like, go to that school's camp and see what you do there, see what they think of you. A lot of times going to that university's camp, if you're realistic with yourself, is a much better investment than some of these other showcases where you have 1,000 kids and there's 25 different fields. The scouts, the colleges and the scouts can only be at one place at one time.
I just had that conversation with a parent of a player. Geez, I don't know, it was a couple of days ago. The exact same thing. I said, first of all, find out what school he wants to go to academically. Okay, let's get that first. All right, then once we figure that out, then write a letter to the coach. Hey, coach, I'm interested in your school. Tell me when your camps are. Tell them a little bit about yourself and when is your camp, and go to that camp. There is no point in going to all of these showcases when there may not even be a recruiter there from a school that you can go to.
Right.
So let's narrow it down. Let's find those schools first and then go out and talk to the coach. And that's a very simple way of doing it.
Absolutely. And like you said, writing a letter is probably one of the best things to do because no one does it anymore. So literally write a letter, type out a letter and mail it. You have a better chance of that coach opening that letter than reading your email, because they get thousands. And unless somebody told them to open it, it's very tough. It's very tough.
Absolutely.
It's not like the old days where you had a stack of papers. It's all on a computer, and if they miss it, they miss it. So
yeah, exactly.
And a lot of the coaches are still older school guys, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, getting a piece of paper might impress them more.
Yeah, definitely.
But it also goes to what you're saying before, Joseph, about taking the initiative. Okay, so at my level, yes, I want to see my players take initiative. I can't imagine, with a college coach, he wants you to take all the initiative in the world. He doesn't want to have to motivate you. He doesn't want to, he's not going to babysit you. So, yeah. So, if you take that initiative and write the letter, then obviously that's going to put you on his radar. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of little things. For me, I always tell my players, like, especially if it's their draft year, I'm going to go and see you at least one series. That's my promise to you. I'm not just going to sit at home and watch the stats, which is what happens a lot of times with agents, advisors, and they only go see their top guy. I try to treat everyone the same because in baseball, you never know who's going to develop. And also I want my reputation to be that, that I supported you, throughout everything. We also had a player sign with Veracruz this year, a pitcher, and he had a gap in his career where he didn't pitch because he had an arm injury, and then he came back and started pitching again. He pitched in Michigan in the United Shores League, and then got him to the highest level Atlantic League at the end of the summer. So he finished in the Atlantic League, and now he's going to Mexico, which is equivalent to AAA. So we got him a contract there, and he's excited. He leaves in a couple of weeks. He's a little bit older. He's 24, 25. And but he has a chance to be a starting pitcher in that rotation for that team. So now he does well there, and it's going to open opportunities for him. But I didn't treat that guy any differently, because I gave him my word that I'm going to help him all the way through until he's done playing. So I think things like that, go a really long way. And I feel it's very important. Too many guys get pushed to the wayside because they're not worth anyone's time or money, basically.
So and I understand what you're saying, trying to treat everyone equal and all that, but obviously there is finite time, finite number of miles you can travel in a year, even under the best of circumstances. So somebody is, I guess, one of those on the cusp type of players, which is what it sounds like. You kind of specialize in anybody can get an A-Rod into a program, right?
Right.
So how, talk a little bit about how you, I guess you already have been somewhat, but more like how you do decide on the player that you're really going to work with and go that extra mile with. And because you obviously you just can't do it. There's thousands and thousands of high school players out there.
Right. Definitely. So for this year, we have 10 to 12 guys that are legitimate draft prospects. We have another 8 that are on the fringe, right? It depends how it goes. But any guys that are high school guys, I just create a relationship with them and I say, when that time comes and you have some MLB teams contacting you, then we'll start to get to work. So I don't really do too much work there. It's more of just having that relationship, and seeing them play throughout college. And in that sense, I can probably, watch a game and they'll be playing against the other team. So it kind of works out. But yeah, I don't say, oh yeah, you're all getting drafted this year, let me work with all you guys. So it's definitely a finite group. But if I see something there and my gut tells me, then I'll have a relationship with that player. I'm not going to go and see them all the time, but I'm gonna continue to watch them and see them grow. I have some freshmen at some programs this year that they weren't draft guys in high school, but they're definitely going to be in 2 years. So we just stay in touch, we text, we talk back and forth, see how they're doing, but those aren't my priority guys right now because they're freshmen, they're underclassmen. So usually it's the juniors, it's the juniors that they get the most attention from me, like showing up to their games and things like that, or going up to the New England League or the Cape Cod League to go watch them play. Those definitely take priority. I would say, 10 to 12 guys this year, legitimate draft prospects, some arms that are 94 to 96, touching 97, some really, really good hitters in JUCO, a couple good hitters at the D1 level. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, those guys definitely are priority because they have a real chance. Other guys that haven't gotten that interest from MLB teams, like I can't make them get interest. I can tell scouts about them, but I can't make scouts like them. So sure. They know that, and I tell them that,
So when, like you were mentioning about kids, the one kid you mentioned was not draftable or didn't appear to be a draftable player when he was a freshman in high school, but by the time he was a freshman in college, he was starting to show some signs that maybe something was going to happen there. Do you run into a lot of high school players that your advice to them has to be, all right, listen, you're not ready, but let's look for a good college for you. Let's look for a good fit in college. Does that happen a lot?
Yes, it definitely happens a lot. Like I said, I kind of go with my gut feeling when I see them play and I see something that's like stands out. It could be really good breaking ball, could be a really good fastball, could be, the sound of the bat when he hits the ball, could be the way he runs, his athleticism, his body. There could be things like that. I had a high school kid from New Hampshire this year that actually helped him find a college in the South. And, I started sending out some information to help him out. And like SEC, ACC schools were like, who is this kid? And but he was from the Northeast and no one really knew about him. And so he's out of school in the South and he's doing pretty well as a freshman. But I was like, this kid on the mound, he has it. He's 6'2", but he's just really skinny, but can spin a breaking ball, good changeup, good fastball. So at that point, like he had maybe one questionnaire, but I was like, this kid's going to turn into something. And so that's when I was like, hey, look, I'll do what I can. I'll connect you with some coaches, and ended up getting a really good scholarship from the school there. And he likes it. And, that's a kid in 2 years, I've already established a relationship with him. So hopefully I can keep him. It's not for sure, because we can't have them sign contracts with the agency. So it's a verbal agreement, which is what makes it tough. I had 2 guys this year that are going to be in the first round. I had them for a couple of years and then I lost them this summer, but they just blew up. But, one of them I had, he was in 8th grade. And I was just like, this kid is going to be, this kid is no doubt talent. And nobody called him for years until his junior year. And I was the only one that was going to games and doing all that. But it kind of got out of my threshold. It was like I was competing with companies that have 10, 15 first rounders, every year. So I wasn't really mad about it. I found it to be a success. I think that's another thing we have to take our failures and kind of, be not happy about it, but see the positive in them. You can't always be like, oh man, I failed and be all mad and upset about it. I think there's
But
always something positive to take out of failures.
but in a case like you just explained, it doesn't sound like you failed. It just sounds like that he made a decision for a different reason. I mean, am I wrong?
Right. No, yeah, you're right.
So your approach is the Jerry Maguire approach to a sports agent, right? I mean, that's what happened. I don't know, stupid movie, but it was good. I'm sure that's got to hit home. He had done all that work. The father was talking about how his handshake was his word and his, as strong as oak and all that. And then he went on draft day, and he lost them. But, then what happened? Then he was hurting at the end of the movie. Everybody wanted to work with him. And so, that extra personal attention's that's got to go miles and miles.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. It's funny because one of my friends, Stock Ramirez, I coached with him in the Valley League. And that's why he calls me and it cracks me up because that's just the type of person I am. I really do care about guys. And, even if I lose a guy to another agency, like, I'm like, man, just good luck. I mean, you deserve it. And I've never been upset. I've had plenty of guys that were very, very good players, but it is what it is. You never know. They could potentially come back someday. It's possible. But I always, like I said, I just try to find the positive in things, no matter what the situation, and just try to treat everyone with respect and be there as a support system. It's easy to be there when the kid is doing amazing. He's the best player in the conference, or he's the best player in the minor leagues. But then when he starts struggling and no one talks to him, his girlfriend don't even want to talk to him. He's so bad. You got to be there to have those conversations. Sometimes I'm up. I have guys on the West Coast in Arizona. Sometimes I'm up at 2, 3 in the morning because they're calling me and talking about, practice or whatever. But you got to be there. You just got to show up. That's what I always say. If you show up, some good things will happen.
Yeah. So when you say that, there's instances where you lost a player. So is it a matter of just the other agency maybe had a better sales pitch and I don't want to say better sales pitch, but a sales pitch that maybe was more appealing to that family? Is that really what it comes down to?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of times I think families and players fall into the trap that just because it's a bigger agency and they have billions of dollars that they're going to get their kid more money. But the reality is that the agency has really nothing to do with the player and his value, because if a player is valued at 300,000, 400,000, like, I don't care what agent you go with, you're not going to get $1 million because that's what you're worth,
Right.
So a lot of times I think they're oversold on things. They're obviously have years of experience, so you can't take that away from them. But when it comes to the draft and you lose a guy, it's kind of like a head scratcher a little bit, because they can't, double what you're worth. They can't do anything crazy. They might be able to get you an extra 100,000, but probably anybody could do it. But I always say it's like a housing market. If you live in a house and all the houses are similar to yours around you, and they're all selling for 500, 525,000, like, and your house is basically the same house, upgrades are similar, your house is probably going to sell for the same. It's not going to sell for $1 million just because you own the house. Oh, David owns the house, so
right,
it's $1 million. I want $1 million.
Yeah. Well, that's the example. It's funny because I'm actually, my real life, I'm in the mortgage business. I have been for 25 years. So and I've worked for the largest lender in the country, and I've worked for local banks and whatnot, a variety of different places. And it's one of the things we used to say when I worked for one of the smaller places. And it would be like, well, I've never even heard of this place. Why should I go with you? And I was like, okay, well, if you think of a hamburger, what's the first place you think of? McDonald's, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is that the best burger you ever had? God, no. So it's the same type of mentality here, where you're looking at your players becoming one teeny tiny number in this giant machine, or be the most important person on my plate. in my portfolio. And yeah, the idea of wanting to be with that bigger company just because it's a bigger company it's insane. But what do kids know? I mean, the kids don't know, the parents don't know, they're not in the biz, right? So yeah, that's got to be tough to overcome. But that's one of the examples that I always used to give to people, is just like, yeah, if you go to, like I said, you want to get all your burgers at McDonald's, have at it. But, if you want, Angus prime choice beef, that's different.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I'd actually use a smaller mortgage company for my house too. And I loved it because you're able to call and talk to somebody. So that's the difference
Right.
between me and some of these other agencies, is like, you might not be able to get on the phone with that guy. He might be so busy, he don't want to talk to you. If you're hitting bad, he's definitely not going to talk to you.
Right.
And so, if you go with a bigger agency, you're just a number, and they get rid of guys. I've had guys that I've heard that they ask for equipment and they're not doing well. They're like, "Hey, I'm not a sporting goods store. Like, I need some cleats." You told me you're going to get me cleats if I need them, and I need them.
Yeah.
But so it's just a lot of craziness
Crazy.
that goes on. But I think that the ones, I have a really good group of college guys this year that are so appreciative, and they're always saying, like, you were the only one that was there when nobody else was. Like,
Mm-hmm.
some of them didn't even get questionnaires in high school, and now they're on, their draft prospects for this year. So it's gonna be really fun this year, I think, for the draft, for all those guys that kind of were on nobody's radar. And just hearing them say, like, they appreciate me, and when nobody else believed in them, and that's probably the most rewarding feeling. So,
Can you give us something like, what's, you talked about where you did speak to a player that was in 8th grade, but is that, like, what's the youngest that you'll seriously start working with a player? Is it around the 9th, 10th grade, somewhere around there?
I mean, I'll be honest, I've seen 12-year-olds that I've talked to their parents. They're just outrageous. Like, I mean, it's just, sometimes you see something, it's just different. Like, I'm not talking about, advising them or anything. I'm just like, oh, you're his parent? Wow, this kid is really good. I mean, it's just pretty crazy. I mean, especially in South Florida here, like, we'll see Latin American kids, or we'll see the South Florida kids, or we'll see Bahamian. Like, there's some of these prospects, like, in this area, that you're like, holy smokes, like, this kid's 12. Like, just the way he moves and fields a ground ball and throws, like, you're like, wow, like, this kid could be a major league player someday. If this keeps developing the way it looks right now, like, there's a very good chance. So I've seen some 12-year-olds that are outrageous. I'm not gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna work with you, but I'll follow them and I'll see them. And if I see them at a tournament, or they tell me, hey, I'm gonna be at this tournament, if I'm around, I'll go and watch them and see how they develop, see how they mentally develop, because a lot of times those kids are so good when they're young that it messes with them really bad.
Well, what happens, and I've been around youth baseball for a very long time, and what typically happens with kids that are very, very talented at that age, what happens is, as they grow, everybody is telling them at this early age how wonderful they are and how great they are, and everybody wants them on their team, and he's hitting home runs, he's having all of this success. Well, as you start to climb that ladder, okay, the competition evens out. And now that kid that everybody's been telling is so great, if they don't prepare him mentally to be able to compete against the kids that are the same ability as he is, that's where you start to lose the kid.
Right. And that does happen. So I usually follow those guys. If I see a 12, 13-year-old, like the 8th grader, he was 13 when I saw him, and it was different. Like, he was like 120 pounds, and he was just, you could just see it was just different. It was just the sound of the bat when he hit the ball was different. And so I would say probably by sophomore year, if I'm following a kid from that age, probably sophomore year is when I would try to, like, lock it up. and help them and just be there as support throughout those years and see how they develop. Sometimes they do develop, sometimes they lose it mentally and they don't even want to play anymore because they get to 90-foot bases and they're just not. But
that's what, Dave and I talk about the mental side of the game. I mean, me as a baseball coach, I put more emphasis on the mental side of the game because I think the game is played more from the mental side than it is the physical side. That if you're not prepared mentally, I don't care what kind of skills you have, it's not going to help you. So, all of that stuff, especially at the young age, and I try to get this through to other coaches to make them understand, you have to start preparing them because as they get up, again, there's going to be a lot of failure. There's going to be times when you go 0 for 15. How are you going to deal with that? Is all of a sudden, because you went 0 for 15, is your career over? Now you stink all of a sudden? You have to prepare them.
Yeah, they absolutely need to be prepared mentally and understand. So some of my best college guys right now that were very under the radar in high school, they all have that like, oh well mentality. Like they're hard workers, but they get out, they're like, I crushed them last at bat. so it's one of those. And it's funny because I heard a story from a mutual friend that played with Mike Trout in the minor leagues, and it was like he'd hit a home run and the other 3 at bats before that he struck out, and they'd talk to him like, hey man, you got to cut down the strikeouts, and his response was, yeah, but do you see that 400-foot bomb I hit? so I always tell my players that story because I'm like, that's why those guys are so good, is because they just carry the positives and just stay level headed. And hey, I struck out, whatever. It was a good pitch, man. That pitcher was nasty,
Right.
Instead of those guys like, oh man, I should have hit that ball, and they're running to the dugout, hitting themselves with the bat, and they're losing their mind over it. And you're like, what's going on here? And those guys tend to weed themselves out. And those guys that are more, oh, you know what? I got to go play defense now. I'm going to make a play out here. I'm going to take one away from the other team.
Right.
Like that mentality, I try to definitely instill in my players. And I had a player this year on scout day ask me, hey, what should I do? I was like, you're not going to do anything different. You're just going to compete. Do exactly what you've been doing. You're just going to compete. Don't worry about all the scouts. Don't worry about anything that's going on there. Don't try to do too much. And he ended up going 2 for 3 in the scout day with a double and had a really, really good day. And he's having a very good spring so far. But the point of the story is like, if I tell him, yeah, man, you got to go 3 for 3 with 3 bombs, like, what is that going to do? Like that would be great, right? But you can't control the outcome in baseball. You could have the same pitch, same location 10 times and get out every single time, or you can get 10 hits in that same location just because that was your month, and then the next month you can't hit that pitch. So there's kind of no rhyme or reason sometimes. And that's why I always tell my guys, like, you should just want to compete. When you're a hitter, all you should want to do is compete and put yourself in this really dark place where you just don't want to strike out. Like, this guy can't get me out. And if you do that all the time, I think you're going to have more success than trying to have the outcome of getting a hit, because you can't control that. I tell my guys, hit the ball hard as many times as you can in a game. And that's all you should focus on. Don't worry about hitting it far. Don't worry about hitting the gap. Just try to barrel up the baseball as hard as you can consistently. And it's a better way to go about it.
To your point, I drill this into my players all the time, and I tell them that if a recruiter walks onto the field while you're playing, and let's say he came mid-game, he should not know whether you're throwing a no-hitter or you just gave up 3 bombs. He should not know. By your demeanor, he should not be able to tell. Go out there and compete, get the next guy, play the game 1 pitch at a time.
Absolutely. It's crucial.
So how does somebody that's out of your purview, how do they get your attention? Is it sending you videos, sending you stat sheets? Like how do we get somebody on the road, on the right path with you?
So I would say sending me video. People can email me at joseph@empowermentsportsgroup.com. They can follow me on Twitter at Joseph R. Guzman and Instagram at Joseph R. Guzman. and sending me video, and then I'll go and watch the kid. I'm never just like, oh, look at this video, looks great, because video shows what you want people to see.
Right.
So
right, they're not gonna show you when he struck out 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to go and see that. I mean, one of the biggest things I think I evaluate now for position players is their plate discipline, how they take pitches, and what their swing, how their swing looks, because guys can have a great swing, but if they don't make contact, then what's the point of having a good swing? Or you have guys that make really good contact on fastballs, and then when they throw a breaking ball, it looks like they're dancing. So that's yeah. So that's not a good thing, because if they're dancing at high school age, they're going to be running out of that box at the college level. And if you forget it at the pro level, they're going to just be walking back to the dugout because they don't even want to look at that. So it's one of those things. I look at body language. I hate seeing players that are like, they look like their cat just died after they struck out and they're about to cry. It's like, you got to get over it, because you have so many at-bats left. And seeing that attitude and seeing them drag out to the field, like I watch all those things. I watch how they set up, like as far as before the game, like who's the guy that's warming up. And we had a player last year that went to a pre-draft workout with the Tigers here in Lakeland. And so I drove up for a day. It's only about 3.5 hours from me. And funny story. So the kid was from California. He's a JUCO kid. He's doing really well this year. And he was on some boards last year for the draft. But so I get there and I'm texting him. I'm there early. Like I'm there like 2 hours early. He's not answering. I'm like, oh man, I hope this kid like not asleep or something. He's from California. and so I walk out to the stadium and he's out there like sweating. Like he's like ready to, like 2 hours early, like he's like ready to go. And I'm like, this is the reason why I like this kid, because I've seen him like before games, but that's like an hour before. But like he was like full sweat, and he was like California, like didn't have a tan because it wasn't warm yet there, and like he was just red face, like just completely ready to go. And then it was just like seeing that was like it was I was so happy to see that. And so the whole workout went through. They didn't run the 60 till after. And of course, they asked the guys now in this workout, hey, who wants to run the 60? Or some guys, not everyone has to run it, but if you want to run it, of course, he's the first guy. He runs it. He smokes everyone to 60. And he's just like so much energy. And like, and you see things like that. And it had nothing to do with what he did on the field. It was like the before. Like he's full sweat, ready to go, excited to be there. 3-hour time difference. So for him, it was really 5 a.m. And he's just like, no big deal. He flew in the night before and just got after it.
Running. Awesome.
But now here's the important question. How often do you see that? I bet it's very rare.
It is rare, but then there's also like this 10% that are on a different level now.
Yes.
Of kids, as far as like really wanting it and developing and the way they eat. And I've just had so many encounters with guys. Like I had one guy I was on, he ended up going to SEC school. I didn't get him, but I'm still close to the family. And the kid, like it was his brother's birthday, and they had cake for his brother's birthday, and
he wouldn't eat it.
He didn't eat cake.
Yeah.
He didn't eat cake for the birthday, right? And everyone's like, what's going on? And it was his whole senior year. He was like this, even now he's still like this at the SEC school. And they were like, well, you're not gonna have cake? Like, he's like, no, I haven't had it in months. He said, that's not going to help me get to the next level.
Right.
So he had like a protein shake, like a smoothie. He's like, get that thing away from me, man. It's not going to help me. He throws 95 miles an hour. So it makes sense why,
Yeah.
So different level. There's, like I said, there's like that 10% now that you're like, whoa, like
right.
These guys are on it. They're in the weight room. They're working hard. They love the game. And then you have a lot that are just like going through the motion.
And it's something that we try to instill in our players, especially with the travel organization, because I'm with those kids pretty much 12 months out of the year, whereas my high school players I'm only with like 3 months. And out of the hundreds of kids that are in the program, there's maybe half a dozen that, do their weight training. They do their strength and conditioning. They watch what they eat. They all of these things that you were just talking about, they do that. But again, out of hundreds of kids, maybe 6.
Yeah.
There's not that many that have that type of drive.
There's not. It's definitely gone down a lot. But I will say the ones, that small percentage, like I said, 10% might still be high, but I'll just give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's 10%. They are like way advanced, like as far as like lifting, like they're, they know their data, they know what they did that day, they know, what they need to eat. They go to sleep. Like I have some guys that like 9 o'clock they're asleep. And we've talked about how sleep is important, and I do a lot of studies on that. I've talked to a lot of sleep doctors and things, but some of these guys, like, you don't have to tell them, like they're like, I'm going to sleep, I got a game tomorrow, and they're like, so it's got to, and that's why you see like the velocities increase, because some of these guys are just really, really in tune with it. They do their training, they eat right, they sleep right, they do their recovery. They got red light therapy, they have ice packs, they have the Theragun, and they're doing everything. And then they come out to the start and you're like, man, this guy's amazing. But some of them, like I said, that small percentage, they're very advanced with their training and how serious they take it.
Oh, yeah, 10%. I was just going to say 10% is probably right on, because you think on an average team, that's one kid.
Right.
I mean, you're thinking like 10% of the whole population, that might be too much. But when you break it down team by team, if there's 16 kids on a team, it's 1, possibly 2 kids. So that's, that's probably about it.
Yeah. I had a parent come to me not that long ago, and in the travel organization, I work with the 14U players. So this particular kid he's not even 14 yet. He doesn't turn 14. Believe it or not, Dave, you've heard me talk about him. He's 13 years old. He's 6'2", about 220 pounds.
Wow. At
13, he's a monster. But he's one of these kids, like you were just talking about, that takes it to heart. So I was telling the boys that, hey, we're training at 7 o'clock in the morning on Sundays, which means that you have to be here between 6:30 and 6:45. So I want everybody in bed on Saturday night, 8:30, 9 o'clock, so that you're ready to go, and you're not sleeping when you get here. So anyhow, again, the one kid, the dad came up to me, he said, I don't know what you did to him. He said, but every Saturday night, 8:30, 9 o'clock, he's in bed. He's up before I am, ready to go. And so, hopefully.
I need that kid's name. Because that's like it goes such a long way, man. I just when I get a phone call from one of the players just randomly, like, hey man, I had my game today, I did this, like, it's such a good feeling that you don't have to like, oh, let me call him and see how he did, because they don't think far enough ahead. Like I like to see that appreciation, and the fact that kid is doing that at a young age, it's awesome, because there's not that much responsibility in this generation anymore. And if they're doing that, that shows that he's dedicated. He's dedicated to that.
I think he's got most of the battle won already at an early age, because he understands. And I'll tell you that he does have a lot of mechanical issues. So as mechanics, we got a lot of work to do. But like I was saying, most of the battle is won already, because I know I can count on him. If I tell him, listen, you got to give me a bucket of balls every night, and this is the drills I want you to do to make sure, we're getting the right swing path, I know he's going to do it. Mm-hmm. Whereas there's other kids, you could talk until you're blue in the face. And when they come to practice, they'll tell you, yeah, coach, I hit a bucket of balls. I'm like, you didn't hit a bucket. You haven't hit a bucket of balls in a month.
Right. I can see in that swing, right? You missed 6 balls right there.
Right. So, but yeah, so I'll keep you posted on his progress. If he progresses the way I think he will, then yeah, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. People don't realize the extent that, like, Russell Wilson from the Seahawks, they said he spends $1 million every year on his his chef and his training and everything for himself to be better. Like, so that's the extent that Russell Wilson does. And so JD Martinez works out a place down here, Reroute Performance, that I know Joe down there, and some of my guys work out there. So it's a cool experience for them to see, JD Martinez and Miguel Cabrera and all these guys. But JD Martinez literally has a hitting guy that travels with him.
Wow.
And stays whenever he's at home. He's in Boston. He stays there and he works with him on his swing.
Wow.
And he invests in that. But JD Martinez is just like such a different breed. He was a later round D2 draft pick, and he got cut from the Astros and he reinvented his whole swing.
Yeah.
But mentally, he made more money after 30 than most guys make in their whole career. And he reinvented himself at 30, but the mindset was there. I mean, he was flying all over, flying to California to get checked in with different hitting instructors there, or doing video analysis. They're changing his swing, and then he has this guy that is going to travel him this year. It's like a protege of the guy from over there. But he pays to have this guy with him whenever he's in Boston.
Right.
Throws him extra pitches, throws him, and because and he's always watching video of himself, watching video of himself. That's what it takes. Guys think, oh man, JD Martinez is a great hitter. Well, he wasn't always a great hitter at the pro level. He had to completely revamp his whole swing and learn how to hit at the big league level. So, but it took the mental aspect that we're talking about all this time to get there. If he doesn't have it, he just would have weeded himself out and he would have been done.
Right. Effort and attitude. It's all about effort and attitude. Yeah. I hammer that down every week.
Absolutely.
All right. So this has been great conversation. It's been great talking with you here, Joseph. This is Joseph Guzman at empowersportsgroup.com. You can reach him on his email address there. He's on both Twitter and Instagram at Joseph R. Guzman. And, reach out to him if you have any questions about getting to that next step, whether it's getting into college or getting looks for the MLB. Go ahead and reach out to him. This is what he does for a living, guys. So he's a great resource. It's been great to have you on, and hopefully we'll be able to get you on again down the line. Maybe after this round of drafts, we could talk about how your boys did. Yeah, man, that would be great. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and we'll definitely circle back when the draft comes around and have some good stories to tell.
I look forward to it, Joe. I mean, I thought it was an interesting conversation, and I just want to thank you for taking the time out and coming and talking, Dave and I. Yeah, I'm always glad to help, man. It's important to help those younger guys coming up, and the best advice I can give all those guys that love the game is, give yourself a chance and reach out to coaches. Go to those college camps that you really want to go to. And don't waste your time on going to this big showcase somewhere. Just because it's a big showcase doesn't mean there's going to be colleges there. Kind of narrow it down and go to that college coach. And before you get there, you let them know who you are. You send them some video. You send them your GPA, your SAT, and your information. That way he knows who you are when you get there. And I think like Jimmy said and David said, and write a letter. Put that address on there, stamp it, and like the old days. Got to teach them how to write in cursive first, but but that's a great idea. No chance for that. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Joseph. Really appreciate you spending the time with us tonight, and we'll hope to talk to you again soon. All right, man. Really good talk. Appreciate you guys. Thanks. Take care. Thanks, Joe. All right. See you guys. So there you have it, our conversation with Joseph Guzman from the Empowerment Sports Group. This was, I thought this was an eye-opening conversation. We got into topics that you and I have not gotten into under our normal conversations that we've had, or any of our guests, a totally different direction. I thought it was great. What'd you think, Jimmy? Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was a great conversation. If I had to say the main thing that I took away from this conversation is that there are a lot of good baseball players out there. And, sometimes there are guys who slip through the cracks. And you, as a baseball player, have to understand that you have to go out and make things happen for yourself. And I think one of the things that we spoke about where reach out to college coaches, try and get on their radar, because you never know. And I think a lot of those players that Joe was talking about, it was a situation like that where most of these players weren't on anybody's radar, but yet they still had the ability and they went on to do great things. So believe in yourself and take matters into your own hands and make things happen for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the two main things that I take away from it is, number one, getting into the whole mentality of Division I or bust is a fool's errand. There are so many opportunities out there, and Joseph talked about it. There's so many opportunities, whether it's JUCO, Division II, Division III. As long as you're getting reps, as long as you're getting good instruction and you're getting good reps, really that's what it's gonna take to get you on the radar. Everybody has film these days because everybody has camera phones, right? I mean, so it's not like back in our day where somebody had this 1.5 foot long, VCR tape recorder on their shoulders. It was one dad had it if you were lucky, and you could get a tape that then you'd have to copy the tape 100 times to send it out. I mean, so it's that part of it. It takes a lot of the excuse out of it is what it boils down to. And if you're not going to take that step to just, your parents don't have to know anything about baseball, but they can catch you on the camera, right? I mean, they can catch you on film. So it really takes a lot of that excuse away, and the onus is on you as the player to make sure that gets done, because you've got a lot of opportunity to do it. The other thing that I took away, and I think he only mentioned it right there at the end, was about sending your transcripts, showing your GPA and all that. Sure, MLB doesn't care about that, but colleges absolutely do. Yes. They cannot be reserving a spot for a kid, even whether you're getting some money or not getting some money. They can't be reserving a spot for a kid that's not going to be able to play because he's going to be academically ineligible.
Yes.
So, again, something else we don't really talk about here, but both of us being high school coaches, I know it's affected the team that I'm with. I assume at some point in your years, you've had some, whether it's absolutely affected or you've had some close calls with players. I assume you've had something with that over the years. So don't forget that part of it too. The colleges are looking for well-rounded players. They're not just looking for somebody that's going to be able to hit 20 home runs and steal 15 bases. That's not it.
Right. And I want to also appeal to the high school players out there, even though I think that Joseph did a good job of splitting it up between guys who are going to be professional players and guys who are trying to get into colleges. The other thing that high school players need to understand is that you have to try and narrow down your focus. Instead of going to all of these showcases where, you're basically a grain of sand on a beach, narrow down your focus and find the school that you believe you want to go to, find the school that you can go to academically, and then reach out to the coach, get on his, make it a more of a personal experience rather than, the showcases where you're just a number. And let's put it this way, it'd be better off for you to narrow it down and get to that coach and develop a relationship with him.
I agree. Like you said, you might have a couple of hundred kids at a showcase, right? I mean, you're going to, and how much different is your fielding a ground ball going to be than the next 12 guys that go behind you? So anything you can do to differentiate yourself by making sure that they know who you are beforehand, maybe they perk up a little bit when they hear your name called or your number called or see your name on the list as they're going down, checking all the boxes. So I think I think that's great advice. So I think we're going to wrap it up for this week. So again, great conversation with Joseph Guzman from Empowerment Sports Group. Appreciate him taking the time with us here. I hope you guys appreciate it because he doesn't get paid for doing things like this. He gets paid to help your kid, your player, move up through the ranks. And that's what his job is. So I think his advice and his stories are invaluable in helping advance your careers. So let's go ahead and hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. Subscribe, rate, review, hit us up on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We've been moving up the charts. Our listenership is growing by leaps and bounds. It's fantastic. So keep letting us know. You can reach out to us on Twitter at the CTB Show. You can hit either of us up on Facebook, just using our regular names, and then email us It's clearingthebases@gmail.com, clearingthebases@gmail.com. We've been getting some great feedback. We appreciate that from you guys. Keep hitting us with it. It's great. So I think Joseph talked about this himself. Keep in mind the two things you can control: your effort and your attitude. 100% effort, positive mental attitude, PMA at all times, and great things will follow. Final thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, I think Joseph actually accentuated my point by talking about how he wanted people to understand that, you know, he cares and he's going to do what he can do to help you. So that leads me into what I always say: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.